Hello brawlers, Ace here, back with a Fellowship patch notes video. So let's hop right in. Alright, it is November 20th and the patch is live. You should be able to play it right now. Let's quickly go over what's changed, what's been nerfed, what's been buffed. First thing first is they've added in some changes to just a few fixes in the UI in general. Nothing too crazy here. The biggest thing here is that they changed how the boss borders interacts with players versus NPCs. We'll get to that here in a little bit, but let's keep on going. So one of the big changes here was whenever there was a percentage of your main stat bonus given to you, so plus 10% agility, for example, that was not being calculated correctly, and it had different damage values depending on whether it was a heavy damage ability triggering this damage or a small damage ability, so like maybe a small dot. Essentially with heavy damage abilities like High Wind Arrow, you were only doing about 2.2% of the intended 20% damage. So this will be a huge buff for certain characters or certain talents that use your main stat as a bonus. Alternatively, for small damage abilities, so like Mara's Volatile Poison, little dots here and there, they were getting about 50% value out of that instead of 20. So really, for anybody who has a high amount of damage, it was a nerf or a buff. If you have a bunch of low amount of damage, you might see some nerfs here for this. But they have definitely buffed Mara in other ways, so let's move on to that. So you can see here a list of the abilities, bonuses, and talents, weapon traits that is affected by this change. You can kind of go through them here, but you can see it's hero talents, set bonuses, gem bonuses, weapon traits, which I think will be the big one. And then there was also an issue where when you are completely overgearing a dungeon, sometimes you would deal 1 or 2 damage. So that should be fixed now. Let's go down to the hero buffs and nerfs. So Meiko has had a very nice little set of buffs here. I would even go to say as that she's going to be super competitive now, and we'll get why. So we have a few like plain small amount of damage increases here and there. Remember that Meiko heals herself based on damage dealt, so all of this should be a very nice little buff to her. We have these increases all the way through. But then we get to Spirit Vortex. This has gotten a huge buff here. So, Spirit Vortex now grants 15% dodge chance, up from 5. So you get 10% flat dodge chance just by having this ability up. Which, if you've played Meiko, you know you can have this ability up pretty much at a whim. I want to say it takes like 2 or 3 globals to get this ability up. Super easy to keep up 100% of the time. Spirited Vortex is also now a little bit larger. I think that's always nice. And here's the other big one. So, Spirited Vortex now has 10% reduced damage when they get hit by it, which this sub 5-second duration is kind of a it throws you a little bit off because it ticks every 5 seconds, so it'll just be up 100% of the time when you have Spirited Vortex up. This is to offset the Helena change that they added in recently. I want to say it was one of her techniques where it goes on most enemies in front of you and they hit you 10% less hard. So this is a nice little change. I think it'll bring Meiko back in line with Helena. I want to say I've seen 2 Meikos all week, and the rest of the people I've been playing with has all been Helena. So hopefully this brings Meiko back up a little bit. I'm excited to give her a try later today. Rhyme has had some small buffs. These are mainly due to the percentage damage issue that we had up top here. They wanted to bring her back in line, or they wanted to keep her at around the damage that she was before the changes to the above issue. So I think these are good. Ilarion, I am not convinced. I'm going to give him a little orange marker here. I'm not convinced that he is at a point where he needs to be. I say this as an Ilarion main. So, you know, my character should always be the strongest character and all that. But Sky Strider's Grace has been reduced by 60 seconds, so you're able to use it every 2 minutes now. That is his big haste cooldown. And his ultimate also now makes you do 5% more damage than before. It used to be 50, now it's 20. That's nice. But we'll get into why I think this is not necessarily going to pan out for us. And it relates to his weapon, or his primary single target weapon, the Void Touch. So we'll get to that. Ardios has been brought a little bit back in line. I wouldn't call this a nerf. I would just call this like a rework that is proper. Essentially, his ultimate that they buffed last week didn't have a cap on the AoE damage that it could do. So it would do the same amount of insane damage to 32 enemies as it would do to the 8 now. So they just brought that back in line. If you have more than 8 targets, the damage that you do to the ones over 8 will be reduced. That's good. It doesn't make sense to have a tank that can just run in, pop all their cooldowns, pull the entire map, and Ardios does insane damage. So this is probably a well-deserved adjustment to him. Mara's got a few buffs. She was very heavily affected by the main stat percentage bug, so she gets a little bit of a buff not across the board, but on some of her big hitting abilities, so this is very nice. Vigor got a small buff. His Rune of Renewal is a little stronger. That's probably okay. And this one is very nice for Sylvie. It was a bug that she had for a while. If you don't know, she has an ability where you can, or a talent where you can cast all 4 butterflies at once, and it only costs double the mana, so it's supposedly a mana saver over using all 4 butterflies individually. But this was busted, and it would use all of 100% of the mana. I couldn't really always put my finger on it, but you could feel that if you use this talent, you're just burning through mana. And it didn't quite feel right. So hopefully Sylvie feels a little bit better. Now we'll get to the weapon. The Void Bringer's Touch. This is the one that I'll show you what it looks like, because I have it on my Hunter. That's why, again, I'm complaining about this. This weapon right here. It looks like that. Void Touched Bow. And there's a version of this, I want to say, for Rhyme as well, which is why they nerfed it. It is a big single target hitter. And essentially what they did with it is they made it so that it only accumulates 10% of the damage instead of 20. And it accumulates less, almost, yeah, it's exactly half less of the main stat before it does that damage. And additionally, its cooldown is now 30 seconds longer. So they nerfed it almost across the board. That being said, what they did do is give it 100% critical strike chance, which means it can grievous critical strike. This is good if you're building a character that has a lot of critical strike already. I don't know about Rhyme, but on Ilarion, crit isn't that important for you, so it's TBD on whether this is going to be a big damage reduction for a single target or not. But overall, I don't think this is going to feel very good. I don't know why they would change this and not really like alter any of the other ones. They do have some changes to the Chrono Shift bow. It's just the pulse damage now is 10% less. Like, okay, that really isn't why you use it. You use it to get all your cooldowns back. But anyway, let's move on. Earthbreaker. I want to say this is one of the melee DPS weapons. Yep. A little bit of increased damage. That's nice. One of the tank weapons. A little bit of a boost. That's very nice. Healer. Heal increase by 20%. That's nice if you have that. I think this was one of the underperforming healing staffs. So very nice. Finally, they changed some of the curses that you can have. Essentially the Shadow Lord. If you kill him now, it'll give you a full ultimate ability immediately. So you have to kill the Shadow Lord twice, I believe, in a dungeon in order to be able to get to the boss. Which means you should, in theory, if you play your cards well, be able to ult 2 extra times throughout the dungeon. The Shadow Lord's health has been... his health's been increased a little bit. So overall, I think this is still okay. Malevolent Shade, his health's been reduced by 40%. I don't know about Eternal, but even up to the end of Paragon, this thing is such a nothing burger. You just kind of AoE it down. It just doesn't do anything. So it's going to be even worthless now. I think this is kind of a weird question of like change. I don't know why they did that. Maybe it was an issue in Eternal. I don't know. And yeah, and then finally, boss encounter barriers. It will only affect players NPCs and enemies could still run through it. So yeah, those were the changes. I don't think that any of the... let me switch over to Meiko here real quick. I don't think that any of the UI elements are live yet. So if we look at Meiko's Spirited Vortex here, you can see that it's still set to 5% dodge instead of the 15% dodge like they said in the patch notes. I don't know why they run behind with updating the UI. But hopefully in the next patch they'll update this and we can see how that interacts, especially how it interacts with Harsh Winds, where you get an extra 20% dodge, as well as with Warden of the Temple, where you can get the bonus dodge provided by Spirited Vortex is increased by 10%. So we'll see how this interacts with it. They'll definitely have to update these, but TBD on what is going to change here. But anyway, that's it for today. I hope you guys have fun this week. Hope you enjoy the new Meiko buffs. And let me know how Rhyme and Delarion feels after the latest sets of changes. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Keep on brawling.